B to the Orly Borelstein, and I saw Springbreakers. Bottoms up. That's pretty good. Springbreakers is a movie that's very strange. I see a lot of people describe it as an MTV music video or a movie about the MTV lifestyle. That you have these characters who are obsessed with spring break, they want to go and party. And the film takes that lifestyle to its logical conclusion in the concept of what it would really look like for somebody that is in spring break forever and what it would take to what kind of infrastructure you would need to supply that. But it does so visually. You're not told a lot in the film other than the characters constantly calling back home and basically talking about how they're going to be better people when the next scene they're pretty much not going to be better people. And that hypocrisy that the film displays, or that juxtaposition that creates a hypocrisy, is basically where the crux of the film lies in terms of its intellectual merit. There are a few other aspects to dive into in terms of, white privilege of these mostly white middle class girls who are going to college and seem like they have no real problems to worry about because they're just only concerned with satiating their most base desires, that they get to steal money to go on spring break and then they just get to party. And in the movie we're kind of shown what the real party is, what really is going on, not just for these people who are just tourists, but for the people who actually live there year round, and what it takes to basically kind of fund at least the drug aspect of their incessant partying. So I guess I'll go on. Let's get on some broad topics of the film. The acting is pretty good. It's over the top ridiculous. The characters are what I would imagine a boomer thinks of younger generations after watching an hour of like mid double O MTV era TV. Like, the dating shows they had, I think it was called Next. You had the other shows. They had a spring break show too. The competition, the real world, that kind of shit. Like, these girls are shown to be the most vacuous whores you can ever fucking imagine. They're always smoking weed. They're always drinking. They're the most self-indulgent people you could ever imagine. They have seemingly no compassion for anybody else and almost no compassion for themselves because they constantly denigrate themselves in a way that is beyond disgusting. So the acting, it's like a 7 out of 10. Everybody does a pretty good job. There's one of the girls is kind of and then I thought the crying, I just feel like something's really bad's gonna happen, was just, that wasn't the actress's fault. That was like the style of the director's fault for just making that go on for so fucking long. And that's one of the editing styles that I really did not like in the film. But the acting is incredibly competent. James Franco's character is great. And then there's Gucci Mane, I guess. That's a guy. He's in the movie. He plays Black Gangster Man. And that's all we really know. Other than he has a connection with Alien, who's James Franco's character. But it's like whatever. There's the film has a few kind of poignant moments. And I'll get to that later. The sound design was okay. I liked the sound design, I would say, for the first 40 minutes. So this gets into editing, but there's a thing that the film does, and it does it a lot. And it is fucking exhausting after it happens like the third time. But the film basically will do is that it will play audio from later in the story that we haven't seen yet to kind of entice us to be like, oh, how did that come about? Or it will play video later in the story that we haven't got to yet, and then to kind of entice us, as if the movie's like incredibly insecure. Now, the first few times that happened, I thought it was really stylistically interesting. You had these characters going to what they think is, spring break, it's going to be awesome. But then we hear this conversation of like, oh, it's so amazing, and grandma, I want you to come here with me, and everybody's just so nice and everything, and you juxtapose that with what you're seeing, and it's like, you have to be out of your fucking mind to think that grandma would like this. Like, you got to be a fucking lunatic. Like, what the fuck? Like, you see women getting fake beer peed on and their asses shaking and topless, and guys are, I mean, they're just there to drink and fuck, and same thing with the girls, really, right? And then do drugs also. So I don't understand why grandma would want to come along. I don't like that part. That's the part of the film where I feel like that is the perspective of boomer and how dumb they think, younger generations are. But there's another perspective that the film has too, which is the perspective of the actual younger generation going to these kinds of things and what that person would really look like if they were truly given over to the, hedonistic lifestyle. And is rather disturbing. So yeah, the cinematography is fucking great, but it feels like it carries the film because there's nothing going. Like, the plot is really, really thin. I could probably tell you the plot in 3 sentences. Let me try. Girls steal money to go on spring break. Girls get arrested, and the movie doesn't know what the law is. So they would be held in jail on citation, but citation is usually given to somebody in lieu of arrest, and you don't spend time in jail, but you have to show up at your court date, so the film doesn't know what the law is. That part pissed me off. Don't talk. Just Google search for 5 fucking seconds. And then they shoot up a gangster's house. That's it. They go on spring break, get involved with a fucking bad dude, and then shoot up a gangster's house. And the entire movie is played straight. It's not... The characters are played straight, but we're kind of... The film does a thing that's like, imagine if you see like a politician talking about how bad adultery is, and then while he's talking about that, you had, shots of him fucking, his mistress or something. That's basically what the film does with these characters. It has them talking about how spring break is this transformative, deep experience, and they're going to find themselves there and all this bullshit. And then while they're talking about all this kind of, deep personal feelings, they're showing you what spring break is, which is just girls shaking their ass, tits, guys peeing on them out of beer bottles in the most disgusting way you can imagine, and just doing drugs. And you kind of think, like, how can you find who you really are if you're so fucked up in the head on drugs and the atmosphere? Like, I think most normal people consider finding yourself to be this kind of spiritual awakening, that you kind of find out what really matters to you. And I don't know about you, but I've never found out what really matters to me at the end of a bottle, and I don't think anybody else does. And I think a lot of people actually drink themselves to death trying to do that. So it seems to be the wrong path. And I think the film visually tells us that. But once again, we have characters who wholeheartedly believe in the party lifestyle. So the film has a few perspectives to come at. Like I said, it's got the, privileged girls, mostly white. I think Selena Gomez is like some South American, whatever. I don't know. Whatever. But you have these mostly privileged girls who are going to spring break. They don't give a fuck about what's going on in the actual community. They don't give a fuck about what's going on about how the drug production would need to exist for them to do the drugs. They just want to go there and have a good time. And then this film sweeps them along and brings them into that lifestyle. It's like, this is what it's like for the people that really live here. You go to the black strip club, there's all black people there. Like, these are the people who are creating the drug infrastructure for you to have your good time. And they're funding that unintentionally. And it's not like it's the black people's fault that there's drugs. I mean, they got nothing else to really use to financially prop themselves up. but it shows that clear distinction in the film is that when they're partying, it's mostly white people. There's some Asian people there too, but it's mostly people who are obviously higher income who are on spring break. But then we get to them getting bailed out of jail and they're hanging out with Alien and he takes them around to where he hangs out, it's just like all black strip clubs. It's just all this black neighborhood because, like he says, he was one of the few white guys where he grew up and it's mostly black people. So these people are tourists in this area and they're wrecking the place. We show that extensively. That they show up, they just trash the whole place, they do drugs, and then they leave. And they take their problems with them, but they bring their problems temporarily. And then in the place, you have a horrible community of, gangs, people driving around in cars that they probably can't afford with real means. I mean, if any of these guys got audited, the IRS probably would have a field day, but that's not going to happen. So that's the main story. And you have that perspective told through these characters who genuinely believe it. Like one of the girls gets shot and then she goes home. So now we only have 2 girls left. And then they're like, yeah, spring break forever. And they like go and shoot up the guy who shot at them to get like revengeance. And this is where the film gets a little stupid. And this is where I think the film falls apart completely, is that like the film is clearly criticizing spring break youth culture and the hedonistic lifestyle. And like if you are somebody who like when you go to a college or you're applying for colleges and you're like, oh, is that a good party school? Like if that's the thought that you have, this film is kind of for you. The problem I have is I think the film is stupid and it won't convince anybody that believes that, because the film goes so stupid that it's going to be lost on them. But the film is also so repetitive that you won't miss the message, but it will go so stupidly at the end that you'll be like, well, this is so unrealistic. That's not me. I'm not going to go shoot up fucking gangsters or whatever, that you're not going to really apply it to yourself. And I think that's the big issue with the film, is a lot of people either like the movie or they don't like the movie. And some people say that the divisiveness is what makes the film good, and divisiveness is fine. But the problem is that the movie just fails to achieve, I believe, any of its goals because it's stupid. The movie is incredibly fucking repetitive. The first time we hear Selena Gomez talk to her grandma, it's interesting because we get to see that juxtaposition of, the deep feelings, the oh, I learned something, blah, 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 all that bullshit, juxtaposed with how ridiculous their celebrations are and how debauched they are. And they just seem like oil and water. But in the movie, we have to hear that fucking conversation with her and her grandma 3 fucking times. And then we have to hear that conversation with each of the girls calling back home. And I believe 2 of them are like, oh, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be better. Like, I'm going to do school. And it's like, they say that they're going to like be better and they're going to like do school better and these things like that. But you don't see how them partying really led to that. Like, it just seems like they're just high on like, they feel a little down about themselves because they're not living up to like a more higher maturity level. So they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do all these things now. It's the promises you make when you're drunk that you're never going to keep kind of bullshit spiel. And they just want to tell their family that because they know that they've been, for a while not living up to whatever expectations that they feel that people have for them. But it's all meaningless. Who gives a fuck? I mean, I don't know. The film's plot is pretty fucking stupid. But that's the issue, is that it tries to, I guess, do a bait and switch. I looked at the trailer after watching the film, and people in the comments were like, either saying it was stupid or saying whatever, or they're like, oh, it's a movie that's criticizing youth culture today. And then I saw some people saying the opposite. I saw some people saying that the trailer is a bait and switch, like it's supposed to bait the party goer people into wanting to watch the movie about a crazy party because that's what they like. And then they're supposed to get like triggered and be like, oh my God, like I'm going to change my ways kind of thing almost. But the thing is, in the trailer, it reveals that twist. So you don't watch the movie as like a partier and then think like, oh wow, like you're gonna be at the end of the trailer be like, oh, they shoot people and it's crazy and it's clearly not like a spring break party movie. It's just like a downer. Like that's not how the movie was marketed. And they have their official trailer from A21. Like the trailer is gonna be in sync with the vision of the film, I think, from a smaller studio like A24 or A21. I forget, whatever the fucking studio's name is. But yeah, that's the problem, is that the film tries to hold a lens up to youth culture in a critical way by, taking it to its logical conclusion and showing those characters in those situations in the most earnest sense possible. But one, it's way too repetitive, so you'll fucking get bored to tears about the fucking repetition. It uses the same editing trick 5 fucking times in the movie, where it'll have like, visuals, or it'll have like, audio from later on in the film that will tease you and to be like, oh, how did that happen? How did his finger get all bloody on the piano? Why does he look so depressed? Like, so if you care about story at all, and if you care about that shit, the movie gets like probably a 2 out of 10. Now I see a lot of people defending the visual style and be like, "Oh my god, they're dancing like ballerinas with guns between their arms and they got their masks on," and it's like, "Okay, sure. It's that part is cool. The style is pretty cool. There's a few moments in the film where it's like, "Oh, this is the American dream. I got underwear every color. I got all this Calvin Klein shit." And there are people that genuinely believe that. Like, they just buy all the expensive, cool name brand shit, and like that's gonna satisfy them, and obviously it doesn't. And you see in the film, like, none of the characters are really happy. They're just chasing the next high. That's it. They're just chasing what's gonna take them away from their senses, basically, because living in reality, having to work a job, that would be too much. These characters have to go rob a diner, and like that's how stupid they are. They think people at a diner have money, which the movie's a little bit stupid about. Nobody at a diner fucking has money. Like, come on, it's fucking ridiculous. But it's so funny because they could have all worked a week at McDonald's and had enough money to go on the spring break, but they don't put any effort into it. They just like got to get there. And there's these lies. The film is constantly showing us these characters being genuinely wrong. They're like, "Oh, everybody's at spring break." And it's like, you were just in class. Like, is spring break now? Did it start? Like, the film doesn't really show spring break happening, and presumably they're actually still in class, but people that they know are going on spring break. And it just seems so arbitrary, because the partying that they do on spring break is the same partying that they do at the beginning of the movie when they're not on spring break, but they're doing it at the beach. And somehow that is more transformative. And I'm pretty sure the characters live in Florida anyway, so they just drive down there. Like, it's not like you're going to the Holy Land if you live 20 miles away. Huh? It's just ridiculous. And so many of the things in the movie are there purposefully to show the hypocrisy of the characters. But the problem is then it doesn't, like, the characters are earnest, but the filmmaking isn't. Like, then the characters go after all this bullshit and go shoot up Gucci Mane and his crew, and James Franco dies, and then the two girls live, and they're shooting them all up with their swimsuits on, and it's just fucking ridiculous. And it's like, you didn't need that. You know what should have happened is that the one girl should have died, or they all should have died. Everybody should have died except James Franco's character. Like, they're tourists, they're trespassers in a community and a lifestyle that they don't understand, but they admire because of, rapper videos and that kind of other bullshit, gangster drug party culture. And that when they actually come face to face with it, they should be like, "Oh, we want to get out of here. This is scary." But instead, like, two of the girls want to get out of there, but some of them are like, "Yeah, spring break forever. We got to go shoot them up now." But it's like, not even like, I don't even know what their justification was. Like, was it revenge? I don't. And that's the problem with the film, is that like they spend so much time repeating so much dialogue, but I can't tell you what the motivations are of the characters other than fucking and drinking. And there were some motivations, but I don't know. I thought the movie was pretty shit. I mean, it has an interesting style. It's definitely not as crazy or dreamlike or frenetic or fast paced or like you're watching the movie drunk or anything like that. It's one stylistic trick done about 8 times in the film. You're gonna get fucking bored by it when you notice it the third time, and by the time the fifth time it comes around, you're gonna want to shut the fucking movie off. That's the reality of the film. Oh yeah, and then Britney Spears, like whatever. It's just stupid. All the characters are dumb, and I don't mind that the characters are dumb. But this didn't do anything with it. It's just one cinema. Blah. It's just one editing trick 8 times, and you have a dumb story about stupid partiers. And I don't know what perspective is real or right. Is it boomers? Boomers youth are too hedonistic. Is it like holding up a mirror, self-reflection? Is that the perspective to have? Because I can do both of those. But if that's the case, the ending of the film just undercuts all of it and just makes it all stupid. It's just because that part is too ridiculous. Like, and there's no real explanation for it. It's just like a movie that looks good if you see it out of context. If you see James Franco sucking off 2 silenced pistols, oh, that's quirky. But oh, who cares? Like, there were some interesting moments in the film, but like when the only dialogue that matters is the dialogue that's like reinforcing the theme, and the dialogue is telling you the theme of like, this is the American dream, and he tells you all this bullshit that he thinks the American dream is, and that's obviously not what the American dream is, but it's what some people believe the American dream is today, or it's what it's become because it's so hard to get ahead or whatever like that. Median income hasn't increased for 30 years, blah blah blah, that kind of shit. Maybe. But and I don't even care that the main characters didn't have any character development. I know that's like one thing everybody bitches about, the characters don't have any character development. Who cares? Like, I wouldn't expect people like this to change. I expect them to keep making mistakes until they die or something horrible happens. And the problem is that they keep making mistakes and they don't die, and horrible things happen and they don't die, but other people die. So I felt like this movie, I saw Uncut Gems today actually, and this movie is like a really shit version of Uncut Gems in a lot of ways actually, because they both deal with like these privileged people taking advantage of basically black communities for their own gain in separate ways. But Uncut Gems is a good film, and this is shit. So Springbreakers, fucking 2 out of 10. It has a cool artistic style, but it just repeated it too much. The acting was okay. At times the film was interesting, but it just never got as disturbing as it needed to be. Like, showing the random shots of girls' tits partying was cool and all, and showing the random beer piss game was cool and all the first time, but after the film shows it like 3 fucking times in a row, and you only really see the main cast partying like I think 3 times in the movie, like it seems like the partying is so disconnected from the characters, and they're just always in the background. I don't know. I wanted to see like the film just cuts in between times so much. Like, they'll be partying, and then they'll be on scooters, and then they'll be having these poignant moments that the film is showing to be poignant, but you kind of laugh at it because it's like, what? This is ridiculous. Everybody's so nice. It's because they want to fuck you, you dumb bitch. Like, I don't understand. I don't know. I want to read something on the internet that convinces me that this is a good movie that's worth seeing, but I've yet to be convinced. And I already saw it. So when people say things about the film, I don't know. There are things I've already thought, but there always seems to be something that contradicts it being good. So I don't think it's good. It's shit.